After getting the millionth ad for these acrylic markers on TikTok, I finally decided to see if it's actually as good as the ad showed. Spoiler alert, it kinda is. I recently bought the Julsart acrylic marker set on the TikTok shop after getting a ton of ads for it. I've been using Posca markers to add some nice visual touches in my sketchbook, but I've been wanting a bigger color range, so I decided to give these a shot, especially since it's a brush tip rather than a chisel nib. First, let's start with the pros. For me, a pro is a brush tip. Some may want a nib instead, but I like the brush tip so I can get varied line width. The brush tip honestly wasn't that bad. I prefer a bit more of a stiff brush, and these are on the softer side. So if you like softer brushes, then I think you'll like the brush nib more than I did. I was curious how opaque the paint would be, and honestly, for how cheap the set was, I was expecting worse. If you want to layer a color of the other, you need generally 2 layers from what I tested, and if it's a really light color on a dark color, then around 3 layers is good enough. So I was honestly pretty impressed. I thought it'd take multiple layers, so I thought this was actually really good. It was probably one of the strongest suits. I thought it wasn't going to layer nearly as nice as it did. When it comes to streaks, however, for the most part, most of the colors dried okay, but there were a small few that definitely dry very streaky. Some of them include the off-white I used for the eye and the skin tone color I used, but after about 2 to 3 layers, you can usually get it good enough that's not as noticeable. But of course, if you take a closer look, you can still kind of notice the streaks. For me, I don't mind, but if you want a really smooth look, then I think it'd be hard or you would need to use a few more layers. Also, when it comes to layering, it did not pill the paper, which I was pleasantly surprised by. I'm used to my Posca markers that even one layer can be a struggle, and by the third, it's almost always pilling at the paper. So for sketchbook use, I'd say they're really good since it won't destroy the paper as quickly. I only had a very small single pill once, so overall, I'd say it really didn't cause my paper to pill at all. I did also use a light hand to avoid pressing down too hard, which I'm sure helped, but I'd say that's pretty good. And last but not least, the black marker never needed an additional layer. One was always fine, which is good since it's the darkest color, means I don't have to ever redo the line art, just one pass was more than enough. Oh, and also the marker pen cases themselves. The caps were generally accurate to the color that comes out, which is nice. A few were a bit off, but overall it was fine. And the best part, in my opinion, is that you can see how much ink is left, which is super nice instead of just having to guess. Okay, onto the cons, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like I said earlier, they can be a bit streaky, especially certain colors. I also had this issue with the tealish shades. Personally, for me, it's not a huge deal, since you can kind of get around it with just adding a few layers, but if you want a really smooth finish, that might be a deal breaker. Also, the case it comes in is fine, it gets the job done. However, I prefer a nicer case to keep this in, something like fabric, like what Ohu markers can come in, or maybe a cardboard like what Artix uses. But considering how cheap it is, I'd say it's still fine in what it comes with. It gets the job done. So I'm not a huge fan of the plastic packaging like this for long-term storage, but it's good enough. For me, it's not a deal breaker, but if you're someone that's really picky about it, or you're maybe going to be using them like a lot, and you're not a huge fan of plastic packaging like this, then I'd look into maybe also buying some sort of case to put them in. I will say that at the very least, I do like how they stored the markers in 2 rows. I feel like sometimes there can be too many rows. Either the row is too long, or I feel like they break up the rows a little bit too much, so then you just kind of end up with like a lot of different stacks of rows they have to lay out on your desk. So I think 2 rows in this case was like the perfect amount, since it took up some space, of course, on my desk, but it didn't take up really that much space, so it wasn't something that got in the way. Overall, would I recommend the markers? Yeah, I think for most people. If you want some acrylic markers to mess with in your sketchbook, maybe you've never used them or you just like to use them occasionally and are looking for a set with a decent range of colors, I think the set works fine. If you have experience with these kinds of markers and want something more professional grade, I'd search elsewhere. I think these are really just good to mess around with and to use as a first set of markers to really see if this is like a primary art medium you'd like to get invested into, or leave it as a just for fun medium you use occasionally, or just use it to add color to your sketchbook for graphics and things. That being said, I think you can get them off Amazon too, so not really sure TikTok Shop is any better than Amazon. So if you want free shipping with Prime, if you have it, it may be worth getting it there instead of on TikTok, since on TikTok, I'm pretty sure for me personally, I paid around $10 for shipping. I did get it on a good sale, so I only ended up paying around $20 solo for them, which I think was a fine price for my use case. But okay, before we end the video, I thought I'd go over the artwork I drew with the markers. Usually these kinds of markers, I only use them for background color, but I've been wanting to mess with using them in more illustrations, and also I wanted a wider color range for using them as background pieces, which is why I got them. I decided to do some eye studies, since eyes are something I'm always messing with in my style. I feel like you can really just get really unique with them, and they really help in making a character design really come together, so I want to mess with the way I design my eyes more. I started off with some studies of styles similar to Hanako, or totally bound Hanako-kun, since I think the way they draw the eyes are pretty interesting. From there, I did some more traditional, I guess you could say, anime style, but tried to keep the coloring in mind like Hanako, and I think they turned out pretty neat. Anyways, that's it for this video. I didn't know how to fill the empty space, so when in doubt, sparkles, emoticons, and a border helps make a page look complete, so that's what I added. If there's any art supply on TikTok you're curious about, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll make a video about it. I love trying new art supplies and seeing what I like and what I not like. And yeah, subscribe and like if you liked the video. And that's it. Bye bye.